we're here. If you have any sort of struggles with body image or disordered eating or lots of food thoughts and fears and anxieties, you are in the right place. We're here to talk about it. My name is Libby Parker. I'm a registered dietitian and certified eating disorders dietitian, and I want to help you break free from some disordered eating behaviors with the education we're going to talk about in today's session. So if you're here for it, please stay tuned because I've got some great education coming your way. I just want to throw the disclaimer in there that although I am a medical professional and a registered dietitian, we are not diagnosing or treating any conditions today. This is purely educational, but I think you're going to get a lot out of this. So what we're going to be talking about today is something that I talk about with most of my clients and is something that is talked about in my book, Permission to Eat. And we're going to be talking about the binge-restrict cycle and how to get out of this cycle and move towards intuitive eating. So very briefly, if this concept is new to you, intuitive eating, what is it? My definition of it is intuitive eating is the way that we were born knowing how to eat. We listen to our bodies, we eat when we're hungry, we stop when we're getting full. Our bodies know what we need. Our bodies will ask us for different types of foods. Our bodies will tell us if we're running low on something, if we need something else. I think a struggle that a lot of people have with the concept of moving towards intuitive eating is they think that if they're just listening to their body and eating whatever, because you have permission to eat all foods fit in a healthy diet. 8 years of nutrition, higher education right here. I'm telling you, you have permission to eat whatever foods you enjoy as long as you're not allergic to them. But the thing I think people struggle with is they think that if they're going to allow themselves to eat whatever, they're going to just eat whatever food they feel is their trigger food all day long. So if they love chocolate but never let themselves have chocolate, it's like, oh, if I just start eating what I want, aren't I just going to eat chocolate all day long? And isn't that really unhealthy? And those are, some of the common fears that come with moving towards intuitive eating. And while I can see where that would be a fear, it's not something that happens because, well, we might eat a lot of chocolate or whatever your food is the first couple of days because you've been avoiding it, and we're going to talk about what that looks like in just a minute. Your body naturally wants to have variety. Your body and all of the complex systems and chemical interactions that are going on is striving for variety and getting the right nutrients in to support your body. So that means that you're actually going to crave a variety of foods. So you are going to crave vegetables, you're going to crave lean proteins, you're going to crave all different kinds of things. And yes, you're probably going to crave chocolate, and that's okay. And it's okay to have that. But you are going to crave and eat a lot of different foods if you are truly listening to and trusting your body. Okay, so that's the goal. That's the dream. That's what we can all get back to because, again, we're all born knowing how to do this. But society, culture, other people, expectations, all that stuff gets in the way, and these external forces interfere with our ability to listen to our body, trust ourselves, and eat intuitively. And what happens is we often fall into something called the binge-restrict cycle. So the binge-restrict cycle or the disordered eating cycle, it has different names. This is my version of it. Other people have similar ones out there because we see this pattern happening over and over and over again. I would say 99% of my clients have experienced this, and I would say about 99% of humans in Western culture have been in this at some point or another. Whether this is a long-term pattern for you or a one-day thing, this is something that I think we can all relate to. So let's just start by taking a look at what this is, and I'm going to teach you how to break out of this cycle. So if we look at this, I want to see, are you resonating with this? And just kind of take a moment, look through it. I'm going to talk you through what's happening here. So at the top of our cycle, we have the concept of binge eating, overeating, doing bad, falling off the wagon, breaking your diet, whatever that means to you, right? This can look like so many different things. This does not need to be an objective binge. This can be whatever triggers those feelings for you, okay? And that leads to feelings of shame, guilt, self-loathing. Insert your feeling words here. And if you're like most people, those feelings want to make us do something about it because we don't like those feelings, and rightly so. Why should we have to sit in those icky feelings? So we restrict, we go on a diet, we do good, we purge or over exercise or take pills or medications or things to try to counteract the thing that we did that's at the top of this image. This inevitably leads to feelings of hunger and or deprivation. This can look like true deprivation of calories. You're not eating enough food to support your body because of whatever you did at the bottom. Or it can be deprivation of specific foods that you love. So going back to that example I just used, if you love chocolate, but you never let yourself eat chocolate because it's a quote unquote bad food or thing you shouldn't eat, or it's not on your diet, or whatever the reason is, then you're going to feel deprived and you're going to overdo it when you get the opportunity and your willpower has worn off. It's the idea of, don't think of a penguin. Okay, what did you just think of? The penguin, right? It's that same idea. If we tell ourselves you can't have that, you can't have that, you can't have that, you can't have that, it makes you want it more. It puts it up on that pedestal. And even though you think that you can have the willpower to stay away from it, that usually falls away because we can't rely on willpower. We run out of willpower. And honestly, that's not being healthy. We want to actually allow ourselves to eat different things because that is going to give us more variety and is going to be a lot healthier in the long run, which I think I will make that point as we continue to go through this today. Okay, so why do we get into this cycle? Because I think for most people, whether you are truly binging or overeating, or you ate something you didn't want, or you're just having a day where you're falling off the plan, or you ate a little bit more than you wanted to, and for whatever reason this happened and you don't feel good about it, I mean, number one, we need to look at where are those feelings coming from. That's probably diet culture induced. But how do we get stuck in this cycle? What is this about? Where is this coming from? Well, we're typically thinking of starting at the top as this undesirable thing. Diet culture leads us to believe that if we can't hang on to willpower, that we're doing something wrong, which is absolutely not true. I want you to, start to break that pattern right now. But what happens is we're on some sort of diet plan, whether it is something from a book you read or something your eating disorder is telling you to do or something a doctor told you to do or whatever. You have these rigid eating patterns, and whether you are objectively binging or you are just doing something quote unquote bad because it's not on your plan, this leads to those feelings that you're less than, you're wrong. And this is totally seeped in diet culture. First of all, there is no good or bad foods. I want you to just take that home with you, if nothing else today. There are no good and bad foods. All foods have a place at the table. And if you are truly listening to your body, you'll eat variety, you'll eat in balance, all that. That's not what we're here to talk about today. But everyone gets hung up on this piece at the top, and we try to latch on to willpower to stick to our diet. Well, willpower doesn't last. If we look at how our habits are formed, how we do things, our willpower is very finite. So, because of this, most people are going to fall off their diet, binge eat, do undesirable behavior, drink too much, whatever, at the end of their day. Now, I say at the end of the day rather than at night because some people are shift workers and so forth. So at the end of your waking hours is when it's typically going to occur. Not always, but for most people. Why is this? Well, because we have something called decision fatigue. The more decisions that we make, each decision takes up some brain power, some willpower, and by the end of the day, if we've had to make a lot of decisions, we don't have willpower left. So that's when we're going to, for again, lack of a better word, fall off the wagon of whatever behavior that we're trying to not do. So when this comes to eating, what happens with a lot of people and where we can see this modeled in this cycle is that if someone is, I am going to use the example of restricting food, but you can insert any of the things on the bottom of the cycle here. So I tend to work a lot with diagnosed eating disorder clients. So I'm thinking of someone who has a restrictive eating disorder, maybe anorexia, maybe something else. And their thing is, I wake up in the morning, I've got all my willpower firing in the morning. I'm going to see how long I can go without eating, or I'm going to eat really light, or I'm only going to eat these specific foods. And they're trying really hard to stick to that. So the first couple hours of the day probably go by relatively easy because they still have their full bank of willpower resolve stored up. But as the day goes on and there are more decisions that they have to make around everything in life, but particularly food, the more that gets chipped away at. So they have to decide, do I eat breakfast? Do I not eat breakfast? If I eat breakfast, what am I going to eat? Am I going to eat this thing that I've been planning on, or am I going to eat the thing that actually sounds a lot better? Oh, well, I told myself I shouldn't have this thing that really sounds good, so I'm going to eat the other thing, but I'm going to eat less than usual because I'm trying to be on a diet and so forth and so on. So you can already see how much chatter that took up. And that wasn't even finishing that decision, right? And then they go off to work, and on the way to work, they see the different food places as they're driving by, and they're like, oh, I could stop in and get a muffin. Oh, no, I'm going to be good. I'm not going to do that. And they continue on to work. And then at work, there's food in the break room that they are saying, oh, that looks really good, but nope, I'm going to stick to my diet. I'm going to eat the food that I packed for lunch. Oh, do I actually want what I packed for lunch? That doesn't sound very good. I could order out. You can see where this gets really, really, really tiring and exhausting. And this is just the food thoughts. This isn't even including, what am I going to wear today? I need to remember to call and make that appointment. I need to do the things that I need to do at work or school or with my family. I need to go pick up my dry cleaning. Like, all of the decisions and thoughts that we have to process require a lot of willpower, thoughts, energy, and energy is coming from calories. So we're also starting to put ourselves in a little bit of a calorie deficit while all that's happening. So while all these things are happening, our body very naturally is getting hungry and we're feeling deprived. In the example of this client that I'm talking about, this person, they are deprived of actual calories and they are deprived of foods that actually sound good. It could be that you are eating technically enough food and calories, but if you're still not eating things that you enjoy, you can still be feeling really deprived. So what happens as this person goes through their day? Well, they make it however long into their day. For most people, they can, make it till dinner time or so, rigidly holding on to this willpower and I'm going to do good and all that stuff. And then as the night wears on, they've been so stressed out, depending on what's happening in their day, either just all those food thoughts can be enough chatter to break them down, or something else triggered it, and all of a sudden, they're going to the cabinets, they're grabbing all the stuff they told themselves that they shouldn't have, or in the case of someone with an eating disorder, it could be eating a couple more bites than they told themselves they were going to allow themselves to. It could be eating a piece of fruit. Like, it doesn't need to be, again, that, objective, like what society is saying is bad. It could be whatever the person, the individual is feeling is that bad thing. I have clients all the time who eat a cup of cereal and go off on, oh my gosh, I binged, oh my gosh, it was the worst thing ever. And like, you ate a cup of cereal, and not only is that not bad no matter who you are, but you don't eat enough calories anyway, so this is okay, right? Um, so whatever, whether this is objective or subjective, that thing at the top of the cycle is going to happen. And then again, we get to those feelings that we don't want to feel. And then the next day we wake up and we resolve that we're going to do better. We're going to be stronger. We're going to have more willpower, more discipline. And round and round and round we go in this cycle. How draining does this feel? Even just listening to this, thinking about this, let alone if you're actually in this right now. There is a way to get out of this. And it is very simply by getting rid of the things that are at the bottom of this cycle. Now, this is where it can get a little more individualized, and where I would suggest, if you are struggling with this and what we're going to be talking about, please, please, please make an appointment with a registered dietitian who specializes in eating disorders and or intuitive eating. That's what you're really going to want for this. It's not going to be a health coach. It's not going to be anyone who promotes weight loss diets. Even if you think you want to lose weight, I promise you, you're going to want to focus on someone who has experience with eating disorders. Even if you don't have an eating disorder, even if it's not diagnosed, even if you don't actually have one, it is still going to be helpful to have this mindset when you're going into breaking the cycle. Okay, so where I was at is we want to get rid of this stuff on the bottom. Now, very briefly, how this looks is if we get rid of that stuff on the bottom, if we are no longer restricting our calories or types of food, if we're no longer on a diet, which all diets are restrictive in some way or another, if we're not trying to quote unquote do good, if we're not purging, if we're not over exercising, if we're not doing any of these things that are interfering with our body's innate ability to understand its hunger, fullness, and nutritional needs, well, if we're not doing those, then we're not hungry or deprived. We're fueled, we're happy, we're getting all the things that we want. There's no deprivation there. And if we're not hungry or deprived, then we're not going to binge, overeat, do bad, fall off the diet, because there is no diet. There is no bad. And so if those things aren't happening, if all of a sudden, hey, I'm fueled, I'm not feeling deprived, therefore I'm not overeating, I have nothing to feel shame about. I'm okay. And all of a sudden, the cycle is broken. Now, obviously, that is a very simplistic, description of this. It's much more work than what I just described. But if you can really think about this, this is how this cycle is going to be broken. We get rid of the stuff on the bottom, and the rest of these go away. I hope this is helpful in starting to understand where some of your food behaviors are coming from. Eating disorders and disordered eating behaviors are not there's no food addiction, right? It is considered a process addiction. It is a way of coping with something else going on in your life, whether presently or past trauma. Similarly to how an alcoholic would turn to a bottle or a drug addict would go to drugs, someone who is using eating disorder behaviors is using the behavior, not the food, the behavior, as a way to cope, self-soothe, numb out, have control over a situation when they don't feel like they can do anything else. If you ever wonder why you're still sticking your hand into that bag of chips over and over at night, numbed out, even though you're not actually hungry, you're using it as a coping mechanism. If you've wondered why you feel the compulsive need to track every calorie that goes into your body, you're not doing it for health. You're doing it as a way to cope and feel like you can gain some control of your situation. Doing these behaviors with food does not equal health. Thinking that if I just track my food, if I just try a little bit harder, I'm going to achieve this thing. That's not what it's about. Food is supposed to be really, really easy and fun. Our bodies know what they're doing. We just need to get out of their way. And learning to have trust between your mind and your body all starts with starting to break the cycle. I hope this was informative for you. This is just one tiny little taste of all the information and education and work that someone can do to break free of these cycles, disordered behaviors, and start to have full freedom with food and full permission to eat. If you're interested in working with me any further, I have different ways you can connect with me. So my business is called Not Your Average Nutritionist. So notyouraveragenutritionist.com is our website. I have a book titled Permission to Eat, a practical way to work yourself out of an eating disorder during college while celebrating the awesomeness that is you. Yeah, you. And it's not just for college students. That's just my primary population. So it does talk a little bit about that, but it's actually not the majority of the book. I've had people of all ages read it. I have some programs, including a support group for eating disorders, and offer one-on-one medical nutrition therapy for eating disorders and select other populations in our practice. So if you're interested in any of that, or if you just have more questions, feel free to reach out. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Not Your Average Nutritionist. And I thank you so much for being here. You are awesome. You are getting it all together. You are fabulous, and you have full permission to eat. Thank you.